walked into Suffolk County Probate Court, the smell hit me first. Old wood and anxious sweat mixed with something sharper, like fear disguised as confidence. The marble floors echoed with every footstep, amplifying the tension that already hung thick in the air. Harsh fluorescent lights bleached the color from everything except the dark wood paneling that lined the walls. I spotted them immediately. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment, dressed in expensive designer clothes that screamed money and confidence. Natalie wore cream Chanel, every blonde hair perfectly in place, her manicured hands folded on the table in a pose of wounded dignity. Gregory sat beside her in a bespoke navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, his jaw set in that expression I remembered from childhood, the one that said he'd already won. 23 years had passed since I'd last seen them in person, but I recognized them instantly from their social media feeds. The same practiced smiles, the same careful presentation, the same hollow performance they'd perfected into an art form. They didn't even glance my way as I took my seat across the aisle. Why would they? To them, this was already decided. They were the celebrity wellness gurus with 4 million Instagram followers. I was just the grandson who'd supposedly manipulated their beloved mother into cutting them out of her will. In their world, narrative mattered more than truth. And they'd already written the story where they were the victims. My attorney, Vincent Palmer, placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder as Judge Thomas Foster entered the courtroom. Everyone rose. Foster was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades cutting through legal nonsense. He settled into his chair, adjusted his reading glasses, and began reviewing the preliminary documents. Then he looked up at me. His eyes narrowed slightly, and something shifted in his expression. He removed his glasses slowly. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, his voice carrying an unexpected gentleness. "Raymond Caldwell?" "Yes, Your Honor." He sat back, studying me with an intensity that made the entire gallery go quiet. "Counsel, please approach." The lawyers moved to the bench for a hushed sidebar. I couldn't hear everything, but caught fragments. Foster's voice. "Is this Margaret Caldwell's grandson?" Vincent's confirmation. A long pause. Foster returned to the bench and addressed the full courtroom. "Before we proceed, I need to disclose something. 30 years ago, I worked under Dr. Margaret Caldwell at Caldwell Biosciences. She mentored me in pharmaceutical ethics law." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Across the aisle, my mother's face went rigid. My father's jaw clenched so hard I could see it from where I sat. "Dr. Caldwell once told me," Foster continued, his voice steady and clear, "if my grandson ever ends up in your courtroom, Thomas, listen carefully. He'll tell you the truth, even when it costs him. I intend to honor that guidance." My mother's attorney shot to her feet. "Your Honor, we request you recuse yourself immediately. This represents clear bias." Motion denied. Foster's tone left no room for argument. "My prior professional relationship with the deceased gives me unique insight into her character and judgment. We proceed." As the courtroom settled, Foster's words echoed in my mind. "He'll tell you the truth." I could almost hear my grandmother's voice saying those exact words. The memory hit me like a wave I couldn't stop. Suddenly, I wasn't in the courtroom anymore. I was 6 years old again, standing at Logan Airport on a scorching August afternoon, watching my whole world drive away. I was small for my age back then, wearing my favorite dinosaur shirt that was already getting too tight. I clutched a stuffed elephant I'd named Peanut, holding him so hard my knuckles ached. My mother crouched in front of me at the departure curb, her Hermes scarf trailing on the dirty ground that smelled of jet fuel and exhaust. Behind her, my father sat in their black Lexus with the engine running, checking his expensive watch every few seconds like we were making him late for something more important. "Grandma's going to take such good care of you, baby," she said, her voice too bright, not quite meeting my eyes as she glanced at her phone for the third time in as many minutes. "When are you coming back?" I asked. The question came out smaller than I meant it to. "Soon, sweetie. We just need to find ourselves. Do some important work." The words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd practiced but never quite believed. Even at 6, I could hear the hollowness in those promises. My father honked the horn, sharp and impatient. "Nat, we'll miss the flight." I grabbed her sleeve, felt the expensive fabric slip between my small fingers. "Can I come?" Something flickered in her eyes, there and gone in an instant. Maybe guilt. Maybe just irritation at the delay. It's adults only, Raymond. Grandma's right inside. Be good. She stood up, smoothed her designer jeans with both hands, and walked away. No hug, no kiss, no looking back. Just the click of her heels on concrete, growing fainter with each step. I ran after the SUV. My elephant fell to the pavement, forgotten, but I didn't stop. Mom, Dad. My voice disappeared into the roar of planes overhead, swallowed by the chaos of the airport. I chased them along the departure lane, little legs pumping as hard as they could, lungs burning. I stumbled and went down hard, scraping my knee on the rough concrete. Blood seeped through my torn jeans. I got up and kept running, but the Lexus had already merged into traffic, taillights disappearing into the tunnel like they'd never existed at all. I stood there in the chaos of the airport, chest heaving, knee throbbing and bleeding, until I couldn't catch my breath anymore. The sound of distant planes taking off felt like doors slamming shut, one after another. The August heat pressed down on me, but inside I felt cold, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that mattered and left nothing but empty space. Then I felt it. A firm but gentle hand on my shoulder, steady and real in a way nothing else had been that whole terrible day. Raymond, just my name, spoken with such certainty it cut through the chaos. I turned to see my grandmother. She wore a tailored charcoal pantsuit and sensible heels, her silver hair pulled back in her usual neat bun. But it was her eyes that I remember most clearly, sharp gray eyes that saw everything but held no judgment. She knelt beside me on the dirty concrete, not caring about her expensive clothes, and pulled tissues from her leather purse to clean my scraped knee. Her touch was gentle but efficient, the way she did everything. No fussing, no drama, just quiet competence. They said they'd come back. I whispered, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. I know what they said. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, as if she were explaining a simple truth rather than watching my world fall apart. But I'm here, and I won't leave. She picked up my dropped elephant from where it lay on the ground, dusted it off carefully, and handed it back to me. Her hands were warm, and they didn't shake. What do you say we go home? I think hot chocolate is in order, and we should fix this knee properly. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. She took my hand. Her grip was firm and warm and real in a way nothing else had been that day. As we walked toward the parking garage, her hand never let go of mine. You'll never have to chase anyone again, Raymond, she said quietly, so only I could hear. The people who matter, they stay. In that moment, I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I felt the truth of it settle into my bones, a foundation I didn't know I was building. That night, I sat at her kitchen island watching her make real hot chocolate from scratch. Not the instant kind. Real chocolate melting in warm milk, a cinnamon stick stirring in the pot. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and safety. Where did they go? I finally asked. They said something about finding their purpose in California. Did I do something wrong? Her hand tightened on mine. Look at me, Raymond. I met her gray eyes, fierce and certain. You did nothing wrong. Some people get so busy looking for what's missing that they can't see what's right in front of them. That's their failure, not yours. Will they come back? She paused, because my grandmother believed in truth, even painful truth. I don't know, but I know this. You belong here with me. Not as a burden or a duty. As my grandson. As family. Do you understand? I nodded, and something in her certainty reached the frightened place inside me. That night, she tucked me into what would become my room. This is your home now, she said. For as long as you want it. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 9 times. Each chime felt like a door closing on the old life and opening on a new one. She sat on the edge of the bed until I fell asleep, her hand on my shoulder. It was the first night in weeks I didn't have nightmares. The next morning, I woke to find my elephant propped on the nightstand. Next to it sat a note in her handwriting. Some things are worth holding on to. Others, we let go. You'll learn the difference. Over the years that followed, she taught me that difference in 100 ways. Every morning at 6, her knock on my door. Raymond, the day's begun. We'd have breakfast together in the kitchen, no TV, just conversation. She'd slide sections of the Boston Globe across to me. Read this headline. Tell me what they're not telling us. At first, I barely understood. But she was patient. What questions does this article raise? What sources did they use? What information is missing? By the time I was 10, I could spot bias and read between lines. The most dangerous lies, she taught me, come wrapped in truth. Learn to separate them. When I turned 11, she brought me to Caldwell Biosciences headquarters in Cambridge. The glass and steel building overlooked the Charles River, and everyone who passed her in the halls showed respect bordering on reverence. But she treated everyone the same, from janitor to executive. In her corner office, she showed me the company's pricing model. We could charge triple for this cancer medication, she explained. Our competitors do. But what's the point of creating something that saves lives if people can't afford it? She showed me letters from patients thanking the company for keeping medications affordable. This is what wealth is for, Raymond. Not yachts or mansions. Making sure people don't have to choose between medicine and food. Wealth is like seawater, she told me one evening at our cottage in Marblehead, watching the ocean roll against the shore. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. I've seen brilliant people destroy themselves, chasing one more million. They forget why they wanted it in the first place. I was 14 when I first saw my parents again on a television screen. I was doing homework in the living room when a news segment came on. Former Boston socialites launched new lifestyle brand in Los Angeles. There they were, tanned and polished, smiling at cameras on some red carpet. My mother promoting her wellness brand, my father talking about real estate success. My homework crumpled in my fist, knuckles going white. My grandmother came in, saw the TV, saw my face. She sat beside me and watched with me until the segment ended. Do you miss them? She asked. No, I said. I'm angry. Good. That's honest. She put her arm around my shoulders. Anger is better than grief. It means you know you deserved better. When I was 17, the summer before college, she called me into her study and handed me a leather-bound notebook. For your observations, she said. Not a diary. A record. A record of what? Truth. Your truth. What you observe, what you learn, what matters. Why? She chose her words carefully. Because someday, someone may try to rewrite your story. This is your evidence that you were here, that you paid attention, that you cared. I didn't fully understand then, but I took it seriously. Over the years, I filled it with observations and reflections. That notebook became crucial evidence later. My parents sent their first email when I turned 18. The subject line read, "From your parents." The message was generic, about wanting to reconnect now that I was an adult, about how family is important. It read like a template, impersonal and performative. I showed my grandmother, who read it carefully. What do you want to do? She asked. Nothing. If they wanted to know me, they've had 12 years to do it. That's fair. But Raymond, save that email. Print it. Keep it. Why? Call it insurance. She was right, of course. She usually was. By the time I was 29, I'd graduated from MIT and was working in pharmaceutical ethics consulting. I still lived in the Beacon Hill townhouse with her, not out of dependence, but choice. We'd become colleagues, equals, discussing case studies over dinner. In her final year, she started recording video messages. I want there to be no doubt, she told me with the camera running, about my state of mind, my intentions, or my reasons. She recorded messages about my character, about why she was leaving me everything, about why my parents were never suitable stewards of her legacy. They abandoned truth for image, she said into the camera. That's not forgetfulness. It's choice. One evening, a week before she died, we sat in her study with tea and classical music. When they challenge the will, and they will, don't meet them with hate, she said. Meet them with truth. It's a stronger weapon. What if it's not enough? It will be. Because truth doesn't bend, no matter how hard they push. She handed me an envelope. My final letter. For you. Read it after. 3 days later, I found her in her study, sitting in her reading chair with a book open on her lap, her reading glasses still on. Peaceful, as if she'd just fallen asleep. But I knew immediately. I knelt beside her chair and took her hand, already cool. I sat there for a long time before calling anyone. Later, I opened her final letter. Her handwriting was strong and clear. Raymond, you were never my obligation. You were my gift. The world will test you now. Stand firm. I believe in you. Always have. The funeral 3 weeks later was packed with pharmaceutical executives, medical professionals, politicians, and philanthropists. The mayor gave a eulogy about her contributions to Boston. I sat in the front row, numb, seeing all these people who knew her professional side. But how many knew she made hot chocolate from scratch? That she kept every drawing I ever made? Midway through the service, my parents arrived late in expensive designer morning clothes. My mother wore a Dior veil, my father a custom suit. Cameras found them immediately. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, but from my angle, I could see the handkerchief was dry. At the reception afterward, they approached me. My mother reached out as if to hug me. "Raymond." "Oh, sweetheart." I stepped back instinctively. My father's jaw tightened. "It's been so long," she continued. "You look so grown up." "I am grown up," I said, voice flat. "I grew up without you." "Now, son," my father started. "Don't call me that." My mother's eyes hardened before the soft mask returned. "We know you're upset, but we're still family. We should reconnect. Especially now." "Especially now that she's dead, you mean?" Several guests turned to look. My father lowered his voice. "This isn't the place, Raymond. We'll talk properly later." "There's nothing to talk about." "We'll see about that," he said, and something in his tone was a threat. 1 week later came the will reading at Vincent Palmer's office. The conference room overlooked Boston Harbor. My parents sat across the table from me with their attorney, perfectly composed, a united front. Vincent read through the asset list. Astronomical figures. Properties. Holdings. Then, "To my grandson, Raymond Caldwell, I leave the entirety of my estate including 65% controlling interest in Caldwell Biosciences, all properties, all investments, and all personal assets." Silence as the words landed. "That's not possible," my mother said, voice shaking. "There must be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Vincent replied evenly. "The will is very clear." "She was old," my father snapped. "She obviously wasn't in her right mind." Dr. Caldwell was evaluated by 3 separate physicians in the months before her death. All confirmed full mental capacity. "He manipulated her," my mother said, pointing at me. "He isolated her, turned her against her own son." "My own son who abandoned his child at an airport?" I said quietly. "That son." The room went dead silent. Vincent continued. "Dr. Caldwell also left a written statement." He began reading my grandmother's words. "I leave my estate to Raymond not out of spite, but out of certainty." Over 23 years, I watched him grow into a man of principle, compassion, and integrity. My son and his wife chose differently. They chose image over substance, performance over presence. They had every opportunity to be part of Raymond's life and mine. They declined. Repeatedly. This is not punishment. It's consequence. My mother stood, face flushed. "This isn't over, Raymond. You think you can steal what's rightfully ours?" "I didn't steal anything." "We'll see what a court says," my father added coldly. 2 months later, the lawsuit arrived. The claims were brutal: undue influence, elder abuse, fraudulent inducement. They were seeking the entire estate plus damages. The media explosion was immediate. Within hours, headlines screamed. Caldwell heirs sued by estranged parents in $2.3 billion battle. My parents' PR team flooded the media with their narrative. Heartbroken parents seeking justice. Photos of young me with my parents positioned as if they were recent. Paparazzi camped outside the townhouse. Walking to work one morning, a reporter shoved a microphone at me. "Mr. Caldwell, did you prevent your grandmother from seeing her son?" I stopped and looked directly at the camera. "My parents abandoned me at age 6 and had 0 contact until she died. Those are facts. Everything else is fiction." Late one night, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered. "You have one chance to settle this quietly," my mother's voice said, cold and clear. "Split the estate 50-50. Walk away." "No. You're making a mistake. We'll destroy you in court." "You already tried to destroy me. I was 6. It didn't work. You were nothing. You still are. The only reason anyone knows your name is because of that money. And the only reason you remember my name is because of that money." Sharp intake of breath. "We'll take everything from you. You already did. When you left me at that airport. This time, I'm not chasing you." I hung up, hands shaking but resolved. Now, sitting in the courtroom with Judge Foster presiding, I felt every moment of those 23 years pressing down on me. The trial unfolded over 3 intense days. My parents' attorney, Diane Sheffield, was everything you'd expect from someone who played to cameras. She strutted across the courtroom floor like it was a stage, voice dripping with wounded dignity as she painted me as a manipulative grandson who'd preyed on a lonely old woman. "This young man," she said, gesturing at me with theatrical precision, systematically isolated his grandmother from her own son. He screened her calls. He turned her against her family. And why? For this. She held up a document listing the estate's value. 2.3 billion reasons to manipulate an elderly woman. Several jurors took notes. A few looked at me with something that might have been suspicion, but Vincent Palmer, my attorney, remained completely unruffled. He was 65, gray-haired and methodical, with the calm of someone who'd seen every trick and wasn't impressed by theatrics. He countered with evidence they couldn't dispute, couldn't spin, couldn't explain away. The phone records came first. Charts projected on screens showing 23 years of communication. 7 calls from my mother. 4 from my father. Meanwhile, hundreds upon hundreds of calls between my grandmother and me. The visual was stark, undeniable. You couldn't argue with numbers. Then came the video recordings. My grandmother's face filled the screen, recorded 6 months before her death. She sat in her study, in her favorite reading chair, looking directly at the camera with those sharp gray eyes that missed nothing. "My name is Dr. Margaret Caldwell," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm recording this of my own free will and sound mind, to explain my intentions should they be challenged." The courtroom went completely silent. I am leaving my entire estate to Raymond because he earned it, not through manipulation, through loyalty, love, and 23 years of showing up. He was there for scraped knees and scholarship applications, for emergency room visits at 2 in the morning and quiet dinners when I was too tired to cook. He chose to stay when he could have left. He chose to care when he could have been indifferent. In another recording, she leaned forward slightly, and I recognized that expression. It was the one she got when she was about to make a point that would cut through nonsense. "I built a pharmaceutical company from nothing. I negotiated with heads of state. I restructured corporate boards. Does anyone seriously believe a 29-year-old could manipulate me into anything I didn't want to do?" The very suggestion is insulting to my intelligence and offensive to anyone who knew me. Several jurors shifted in their seats. The tide was turning. Her final recording was the knockout blow. She looked tired in this one, filmed just a month before she died, but her voice was fierce. "Gregory and Natalie, if you're suing Raymond for this inheritance, stop. You're embarrassing yourselves. I kept records. Every phone call you never made. Every birthday you missed. Every email asking for money that I declined. Every Christmas invitation you ignored because you were too busy building your brand." She paused, and her expression softened. "Raymond, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and they've done exactly what I predicted. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. You deserved every bit of the love I gave you. You've earned every bit of trust I'm placing in you. Stand firm, my boy. The truth is on your side. It always has been." The screen went dark. The courtroom stayed silent for several long seconds. I kept my jaw locked tight, my eyes focused straight ahead, refusing to let them see how her words had affected me. But my throat ached with the effort of holding back emotion. Across the aisle, my mother had gone pale. My father stared at the floor, jaw working like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Vincent also introduced my notebook, the one my grandmother had given me when I was 17. He read entries aloud to the jury, observations I'd made over the years, lessons she'd taught me, moments we'd shared. The intimacy of those entries, the authenticity of a teenager's handwriting maturing into an adult's over years of pages, was more powerful than any testimony could have been. When I took the stand, Vincent kept his questions simple and direct. "Tell the jury about the day your parents left you with your grandmother." I described the airport scene in detail. The smell of jet fuel, the sound of planes overhead, the way my mother's scarf trailed on the dirty ground, the impatience in my father's honking, the elephant I'd dropped, the blood on my scraped knee. I didn't dramatize. I didn't try to make them look worse than they were. I simply told the truth and let the facts speak for themselves. "Did they call after that?" Vincent asked. "Not for years. The first contact was an email when I turned 18. What did it say? That they wanted to reconnect now that I was an adult. It felt transactional, like they'd been waiting for me to age into someone they could have a relationship with." "Did you respond?" "No. My grandmother suggested I save it, though. She said I might need it someday." I paused. She was right. Why didn't you respond to their email? Because if they'd wanted to know me, they'd had 12 years to do it. Every birthday, every Christmas, every school play and science fair and graduation. They didn't want a son. They wanted a narrative they could control. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Tell us about your grandmother, Vincent said, his voice gentler. My voice softened without meaning to. She saved my life. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. She gave me a home when I had none. Taught me everything that actually matters in life. How to think critically. How to stand up for what's right. How to see through people's pretenses and performances. She didn't just raise me. She believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Did she ever speak poorly of your parents? Never. She said they made choices she disagreed with, but she never told me to hate them. She said that was my decision to make, and I had to come to it honestly. Did you isolate her from them? No. They isolated themselves. They never called, never visited, never sent birthday cards or holiday gifts. She had an open door for 23 years. They never walked through it. Until she died. Until she died. Then suddenly they remembered where she lived. During cross-examination, Diane Sheffield tried to rattle me. Mr. Caldwell, you inherited $2.3 billion. That's quite a payoff for 23 years of quote-unquote caring, wouldn't you say? It wasn't a payoff, I said, keeping my voice level. It was trust. Trust. Right. Tell me, did you ever suggest to Dr. Caldwell that your parents were only interested in money? I didn't have to suggest it. She could see it herself. Every time they contacted her, they asked for money. That's not my interpretation. That's documented fact. According to you. According to her email records, which are in evidence. According to her own video testimony. According to phone logs that can't be altered or spun. Sheffield shifted tactics, trying to find an opening. Isn't it true that you actively discouraged her from reconciling with her son? No. I told her she deserved better than people who only showed up when they wanted something. That's not discouragement. That's honesty. You benefited from that estrangement. I benefited from being raised by someone who loved me. The money's incidental. My grandmother built something meaningful, and she wanted someone who would protect that legacy. She chose me, not because I manipulated her, but because I was there, every single day, for 23 years. Where were they? Sheffield had no good response to that. The truth was too stark, too simple, too impossible to argue against. After 3 hours of jury deliberation, they returned. The foreman stood. We find for the defendant, Raymond Caldwell. Dr. Margaret Caldwell was of sound mind, acted of her own free will, and her will should be upheld. Judge Foster waited for the gallery to quiet, then looked directly at me. Dr. Margaret Caldwell was right about you, Mr. Caldwell. You simply told the truth and let it stand. That takes strength. He looked at my parents. As for the plaintiffs, I hope you understand what you lost. Not the money. You lost 23 years with your son and your mother. No court can give you that back. 6 weeks after the verdict, I was at the Marblehead cottage when my phone rang. Unknown number. Raymond, it's your father. Long silence. His voice was different. Quiet. Stripped of bravado. I don't know if you'll listen, but I needed to call. What do you want? Nothing. I'm calling to apologize. I waited. I watched those videos. Of your grandmother. In court. Then I watched them again. And again. Because I kept hoping I'd see something different. But she was right. About everything. You were 25 when I was born, he continued. Terrified. No idea what I was doing. And instead of figuring it out, I ran. I'm sorry. You deserved a father. And I wasn't one. Why are you telling me this? Because it's true. Your mother and I are getting divorced. The trial made it impossible to ignore. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. Not because I want forgiveness, but because it's true. Long pause. I don't know if I can forgive you, I finally said. But I know grandmother would have wanted me to try. That's more than I deserve. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of the Marblehead cottage, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. The salt air filled my lungs, clean and sharp. I had my grandmother's final letter in my pocket, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded so many times. I carried it everywhere now. People ask me what it's like to inherit billions. They want to know about the money, the properties, the power. But they're asking the wrong question. The real inheritance was 23 years of Sunday morning breakfasts where we'd read the paper together and she'd teach me to question everything. It was learning to read between the lines. It was watching her spend 3 hours with a patient who couldn't afford medication, arranging a payment plan herself. It was understanding that wealth means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up. The real inheritance was being loved unconditionally by someone who saw me clearly, all my flaws and fears and failings, and chose me anyway. My parents took me to court because they wanted money. $2.3 billion, to be exact. They lost because they never understood what my grandmother was actually giving me. It wasn't a fortune. It was a foundation. Principles to live by. Values to uphold. A way of seeing the world that couldn't be bought or sold. That judge asked me a question that first day in court. Actually, it was my grandmother's words coming through him. He'll tell you the truth. And I did, because she taught me that truth is the only thing that survives everything else. Money can be spent. Property can be sold. Power can be lost. But truth? Truth endures. I don't know if I'll ever fully reconcile with my father. Part of me wants to believe people can change. Part of me heard the genuine remorse in his voice when he called to apologize. But another part remembers being 6 years old, chasing a car down an airport departure lane, and knows that some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Maybe both things can be true at the same time. What I do know is this. I was raised by a woman who believed in me when I was small and scared and abandoned, who taught me to see clearly, stand firmly, and act justly, who left me not just with wealth, but with wisdom. That's the inheritance that matters. That's what they can never take away, no matter how many lawsuits they file or lies they tell. It's mine. It's real. It's enough. I pulled out her letter one more time and read the final line. Stand firm. I believe in you. Always have. The ocean wind lifted off the water, scattering the morning mist and carrying with it the scent of salt and possibility. In that wind, I could almost hear her voice, the way she used to sound when I'd done something right, when I'd understood a lesson she'd been teaching. Well done, my boy. Well done. I smiled, just slightly, and folded the letter carefully back into my pocket. The paper was wearing thin at the creases, but the words remained as clear as the day she wrote them. The sun had fully cleared the horizon now, turning the ocean into a sheet of light. Somewhere behind me, inside the cottage, a clock chimed the hour. Time to start the day. Time to continue the work she'd started. Time to prove that her faith in me wasn't misplaced. I walked back inside, feeling the weight of her legacy on my shoulders. But it wasn't a burden. It never had been. It was a gift, freely given by someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The cottage door closed gently behind me. Outside, the ocean continued its endless rolling against the shore. Steady, constant,